Welcome, welcome, welcome to Zephyr. Zephyr. Where have we gone now? Into Zephyr. We're going to do spoilers here, simulated debrief. And so if you have not yet done this negotiation, please press pause, do the negotiation, and come back. Bottom line of the setup, the Zephyr negotiation should have taken about an hour, all said and done, to prepare and negotiate, maybe 25 minutes to prepare it and 30 minutes to negotiate. I hope you were fun. I hope you were able to be creative. And as we move further and further, issues become Easter eggs. They become things to ask questions about, question authority, question definitions, and that's where all the value is. And that's what we've been going for in this class since the very beginning. And of course, you reported your outcomes in textual forms. Perfect. Now, hopefully, before you negotiated, you actually did go through this process. You figured out what your interests were, and you wrote them down. When you write down an interest, what happens? It becomes repeatable. It becomes measurable. Same thing with your reservation. And then the plan. How will you accomplish it? What are the principled negotiations and where will we go with them? And if contentious tactics come along, if traps come along, how will you avoid them, diffuse them, turn them to your advantage? And that's the key to all of this. Now, I've heard of negotiations in Zephyr lasting only 17 minutes, and I've seen some last well over an hour. I think the average of everyone I've ever seen so far is about 30 minutes long. So now it is time. Here comes the spoilers. Are you ready? Out comes the blackboard. First is, all right, so here's the thing. This is a management class, right? Entrepreneurship, management. Would you think within the goal of a manager or the entrepreneur, startup manager, essentially, is to screw your employees? In other words, who of us think that when we're managing people, that the best way to do that is to have your employees hate your guts? I can tell you that's a very bad approach. Just curious about that, of course, because I have seen over time, some of us being disappointed that we couldn't screw our new partner or our new employee enough. Interesting, right? Because you'd hope our goal as a boss would be to not leave money just on the table, right? I mean, everybody gets everything that is there. It doesn't mean you screw yourself. That's not what we're talking about here. Now, I promised to go over the interests, in this here, in the denouement here of the story. And of course, some of us have nailed it. Thank you for that. The point is, what price do you put on spending time? And this is really important for Federico. What price do you put on spending time with your mother in her dotage, in her reclining years? And what price do you put on goodwill towards a future partner? I'm not sure there's a graph for that. Okay, so this one was unlike the last negotiation, the rubber mind, that had very easy metrics. Although, and I'm not sure if in the rubber mind, those of us who got 35,000 points and then the boss or future employer only got 2,000 or 3,000 points, if somehow we thought we won in that, knowing that our now new hire or our new boss is going to hate our guts. And in fact, I actually did have a conversation in my accounting class years ago on how to quantify goodwill or brand equity, and it was very hard to do. And that said, the question I have for you, is there a right answer or a wrong answer? How did the house come up in conversation? Did that come up before any of the numbers were discussed? Did you ask each other diagnostic questions about why they were at the negotiating table at all? Remember, negotiators need to ask probing questions that allow them to assess what the other side's underlying interests are. Remember, the interests drive the positions. The principles of interests and positions. Now look, this class has built upon building blocks, what we'll call. And one concept you may have heard of in the past, the felicific calculus. The felicific calculus is a method that has been used to attempt to quantify good will. It's a little bit nutty. That's not what we're doing in this course. Anyway, the progression. We have started from simple issues, simple price of a company, and what's the price of sweat equity, moving into a little less simple plus, we'll call it. Adding definitions. What's the definition of a double stand? What's the definition of a band area? But you couldn't know what those things were unless you asked questions. Rubbermaid became even a little bit less simple in that there were multiple issues, and it was ours to ask questions and look for intangibles, but mostly in Rubbermaid, they were tangible results. Now Zephyr, it's even more less simple. You have to ask questions, you have to look for the intangibles, but ta-da, you're back to differential valuations of a company with a difference. Remember, building blocks, we're building, okay? How we learn stuff. In fact, in the next negotiation, you're going to find even more multiple issues, and you're going to actually end up being what's called a proxy. It's going to be the beginning of how we move into multi-party negotiations, because you're going to actually have to ask questions of not only you and your negotiating partner, but actually of your responsibilities and the spoken or unspoken agreement that you have with your bosses. It all comes down to this, though. It all comes down to the settlement zone, and let's see what we've got, okay? So let's look at the interests. Remember, the interests drive the positions. What's Federico's interest? Number one, caring for an aging mother. Huge. Number two, affording the mother's health insurance, the healthcare bills. Finding a place to call home in Chicago, and financial security. Now, the Zephyr VP, what's the Zephyr VP? What's the interest? Expanding quickly into a West Coast market, for sure, and selling off unprofitable rental houses in Chicago. Do you see how the house should have come up in the very beginning? All right, now look, let's look again here. Some of the best deals that I've seen in all the years I've been teaching this. 950,000, closed in 30 days, consultant for a job, one free renovated home at 900,000 on the North Shore, 2,500 moving expenses, 13 vehicles, and a client list. That is quite an elegant outcome. How about this? $850,000 takeover lease. All cars and clients in home at 750,000 with a North Shore address, part-time or full-time employments, 130,000 or 10,000 a month, plus free medical for the family, for Federico and mom. And here's another one that I liked. 1.1 in business plus list, house at 725,000, North Shore, a consultant job for at least a year, selling houses on the North Shore with 1 year reevaluation, plus dinner at Michael Jordan's Steakhouse in Chicago. Another one that we'd seen, and this is a way of looking at valuing, figuring out the valuation of each of these things and laying them out. A brilliant approach, a good way of going that. And the question is, how do you determine what those underlying interests of the other party are? You've got to ask questions. So the question I'm asking you is, What questions did you ask that drilled down from their positions into their deeper interests? I've seen and heard over the years questions like, why does Zephyr want to buy Federico's car service? Or why is Federico selling the business? Or what does Federico want to do after selling the business? The why determines the what. The interests underlie the positions every time. Information can actually feel very scary. It's critical for creative deals to emerge, though. Here's an experiment. You ready? Share a little information to your next negotiation. Share just a little information and expect the other side to reciprocate with their own information. What happens? That way you make sure the information sharing is mutual. Share a little information and see what the other party does with it. Now, if the other party shares some information in return or uses yours to construct a proposal that meets your interests, you can share a little more. What does this sound like? We've been through this before. We're going to what? We're going to observe. We're going to orient. We're going to decide. We're going to act. And we're going to keep observing. The reason this is a loop is it can begin in orientation and observing, deciding and acting and observing and orienting and acting. You have to keep the loop continually moving, continually going through. You share a little information related to the underlying interests here, not your reservation prices. Do you see the difference? It's the interests. You're not giving away the farm. You're sharing what's really important to you and finding out if you can get some more information back from that. When should you be most willing to diffuse or disclose information to the other side? When do you think you'd be most willing to disclose information to the other side? When do you think? It's when you trust them, when you trust the other side to use the information that you disclose in both of your interests. This demonstrates the importance of trust in the negotiation. In other words, the value of being perceived as a trustworthy negotiator helps you to arrive at the best agreement. All right, and now we come to the honorable mention, the wall of honorable mention. Some of the things I have heard over the years, like things like, okay, how about this? Oh, how about drones at the finish line? Oh, just kidding. Okay, my pride and joy is Eleanor, here from the movie Gone in 60 Seconds, actually referring to one of the vehicles, naming it and giving it some kind of street cred. I know you're retiring from cars, Federico, but how do you feel about selling houses? It's very specific, and boy, that nailed it. You know, I'm leaving my husband, who had an affair with my sister, and I've heard people over the years start making up and contriving insane side stories and backstories. Stick to the topic. You don't really need to go, get your get a prize for writing fiction. I'm nearly 50 years old now, so I don't have the energy I had back in the day. When you make comments like that, you should find out if your instructor is well into his late 50s. Anyway, hey, everyone knows Federico's in Palo Alto and San Francisco. It's the love that we put into our service, adding value. Hey, like a true entrepreneur, hey, I've done it well, and now I'm ready to go find something else. Okay. Hey, by the way, did I tell you Mick Jagger rode in one of our cars? My name is Freddie and Mercury. My mom is Anne. My dad is Federico, and like the car service. Did I mention that Britney Spears is one of our clients? Very, very funny. By the way, who may or may not be able to drive? Whole nother story. Great comments that I've heard over the years. Really digging through the rubble to find the interest. So what can we learn from this today? Only negotiate when you could do better than your alternative. If you don't have a BATNA, you're not negotiating. Both individual and joint outcomes can affect your outcomes in life for sure. We want to maximize the pie and your slice, but you want to help your partner do the same, because when they do better, you often will too. The individual scores don't have to be 50-50 for both people to make 100%. So define the problem, you be polite, you show respect, you don't use the sneaky tricks, you don't need the sneaky tricks. When other people are using the sneaky tricks, you shut them down, diffuse it, as we talked about before. A successful negotiation is really just a series of small agreements. It's not all or nothing. There's always trade-offs between issues. I'll give you A if you give me B. Acknowledge strong emotions so you don't act them out. That's important. Work as a team, play to each other's strengths. And if you want to gain, help the other person gain. It's only going to help. Fully understand the interests and the needs. So, what is the substantive aspect of the negotiation? Can we keep the substance separate from the relationship? Of course. Or maybe not. Hey, I think I know your brother. Does that sound familiar? How are process interests manifested in all this stuff? What's the relational aspect? And the relationship oftentimes can get tangled into the problem. So let us stay away from the cone of shame. And that is what I have for you. If you have questions, of course, and you've watched this video, please email me right away at jbl15@psu.edu. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. And I hope you enjoyed the spoilers. I hope you're like, wow. And thank you very much.